I only read one book, but it's a good book, don't you know? I act the way I act because the good book tells me so. If I want to know how to be good, it's to the good book that I go. Because the good book is a book, and it is good, and it's a book.
Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them, with the obvious exception of the apple tree. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, presumably putting night between evening and morning. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made, and said, "Bugger it, I will look at it again tomorrow." Obviously, though he is all-powerful, his first week at work had taken its toll. And God blessed the seventh day, and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work, which God created and made, and contemplated that it must be awful to have to work night shifts and weekends, and that when he got around to inventing all-night petrol stations and 7-Elevens, he would reserve such jobs for Muslims and other brown people. And then he created Star Trek. Godlog. Stardate 7. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth, when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, which somehow didn't quite sound right, but he would get back to that later. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth. And there was not a man to till the ground, apart from maybe the men that God created in his own image just last week, who were probably sat around on their arses enjoying the eternal sunshine. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground, which was a bit like how rain works, but this watering mist most definitely wasn't rain. Even if it kind of sounded like it was, God hadn't created rain yet. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul, which was a much more fun way to do it compared to how he created man last week. But then again, last week was a bit of a blur, what with seeing how good the herb was and everything else. And the Lord God planted a garden eastwards in Eden, and there he put the man who he had formed. Presumably the man he had formed out of dust, rather than those other men who just had the whole earth over which they had dominion. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight, and good for food, which presumably included coconut trees and trees that did produce completely inedible bananas. The tree of life also, in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, mainly because it was a good idea at the time, and hey, what harm would it do? And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, which is just as well, and from thence it was parted, and became into 4 heads. The name of the first is Sion. That is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, which would be completely useless and utterly worthless in a utopian society of plenty and abundance and blissful ignorance. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the oinkstone, which both look nice, but were also completely inedible. And the name of the second river is Gihon. The same is it that compassed the whole land of Ethiopia, where Saint Bob of Geldof would one day proclaim no rain or rivers flow. And the name of the third river is Hiddekel. That is it which goeth towards the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates, which would presumably somehow survive 6,000 years on its current course, not being obliterated by the flood which God, who knows everything, was planning for a few chapters later. And the Lord God took the man, and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and keep it, for God could not be botheredeth with weeding and mowing and cleaning the leaves out of the pond, even though he could have just made it maintenance-free, scattering a few plants in big pots around a nice wooden deck patio. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, But the man did know that surely there would be a but in there somewhere, and it was so. But of the tree of knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. And the man gave God a look like your dog gives you when you try to explain trigonometry to it, and said, So which one's that then? And the Lord God said, It is not good that the man should be alone, even though I created lots of men and women in my own image just last week. I will make him a helpmeet for him, whatever the hell that is. And out of the ground the Lord formed every beast of the field, and every fowl of the air, just like he did the week before, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. Apart from the "what the fuck is that? Get it the fuck away from me," which they both agreed should be renamed Tyrannosaurus. And Adam gave names to all cattle, which God had previously named cattle the week before, and to the fowl of the air, such as bats, and to every beast of the field, which would be cattle. But for Adam there was not found an helpmeet for him, even though Adam did like the look of Ermintrude, the sheep. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took out one of his ribs, presumably because he couldn't find any more dirt that he could blow into, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man, because he had forgotten about all the other females he had made the week before. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones, nudge nudge, wink wink, say no more, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man, but mainly because, like those other women that God had created, she didn't have a cock. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And Adam did ask God, Is a mother and father a bit like a big pile of dirt? And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed, for they were the world's first nudists, and they didst find that they didst have an overwhelming urge to play beach volleyball and stand around a campfire.